Jordan open. Chicago with the lead. Bryant to Shaq.
Not a game. We talking about practice.
LeBron James with no regard for human life. Anything's possible.
Bosh back out to Allen. His three-pointer. Bang!
Murray for three. Wow! Unbelievable. Making it rain in New York.
We the North are now we the champions.
Not the destination, it's the journey. Mamba out.
G'day and welcome to the Ball Boys podcast. We are here with my boy Callum. How you doing, mate?
Doing pretty well, Mitchie. How you going?
Doing well, man. We're surviving with our drought on NBA basketball. It's been over a week, mate. Like, how are you pulling up?
Oh, it's been a struggle. I've just been opening up all my apps and looking for news, and there's not much going on. It's a lot of my day was just looking through news, specifically, obviously, NBA news. So that aspect of my life is now gone. So it's a bit saddening. How are you holding up?
I'm doing all right. Like I've turned my attention towards AFL footy at the moment, but the grand final for that is on this weekend, and so after that, I'm just going to be in this weird spot where I've got no sport to watch, and I don't know what I'm going to do with my time. Like, what's going to happen? Normally there's this beautiful period where, you know, NBA finishes. There might be a few weeks, but then the AFL will start, or the other way around. The AFL will finish and the NBA will start. So I've usually got my sport all year round, but this year, nothing. Everything's sort of synced up and there'll be this gaping pit of nothing for me to do.
I mean, not quite yet. You still got a couple of weeks. I mean, let's not forget NRL either, for the NRL supporters out there.
Yeah, grand final coming up for that too. Who knows? I might have to talk to my girlfriend, see how we go. Get her back. So we're in the off-season, mate. We've got there's lots to talk about. We're going to go through a bit of a series of pods over the next sort of several weeks, just breaking down each team by team. And today we're looking at the Northwest Division in the Western Conference and looking at each team and breaking them down into what we think they need to do and things that they need to address in the off-season. Potential trades they need to make, where they're at right now, and just break it down from that point of view. And we're basically going to fix their team as the GMs that we're qualified to be. So
yeah, that's right. We're pretty much going to step into that GM role, and like, what do we think they need to do? Should they be looking to, maybe tank? I don't know. Should they look to make a few moves, get some vets in? Like, yeah, things like that. We'll have a chat just to try and make sure, whether it's a win now situation or whether it's a win in 5 years or whatever, we'll try and break it down and see the most rational kind of mindset is for each GM.
I know you and I are both very experienced at this sort of thing. We've put in plenty of hours on My League and NBA 2K. We've worked the salary. We've worked the trade market before, so this ain't our first rodeo.
Oh, not at all.
Yeah. So we'll if any GMs are listening to this podcast, you know where to find us. We're going to start with we're going alphabetically, and I'm going to start with the Denver Nuggets, they made the conference finals. Obviously, lost to the Lakers after famously upsetting the Nuggets. They had one of our favorite players from the Ball Board podcast, Jamal Murray, step up big this playoffs.
He was amazing. He was incredible.
We're gonna ask a few questions for each team. First of all, like, what is this team? And it's pretty clearly that this team is a championship contender. They are in a win now moment, and I think they have a somewhat decent window to get it done. They're not like one of those teams that's, they have to win in the next year or two, but I think they've got a good few years to put some pieces together, have some internal growth going. But definitely their season success will be based on whether or not they, A, get to the finals, and 2, win the championship. What are your thoughts on these Nuggets?
Yeah, I think I totally agree. It's obviously they're a contender now, so they might as well try and make some moves to keep competing. But their window, they've got a big window. I mean, both their star players are very young. You got Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray, who are both of them under the age of 24. So, and they also have big contracts. So Jokic is still locked down till 2023, and Jamal signed that big extension. So he's still on his 5-year deal. So they'll expire in the 25 season. So they're totally locked in. And really young. And then you got Michael Porter Jr., who's also there till 21 to 22 season. So still 2 more years on that rookie scale contract, which is really, for what he did in the bubble, looks pretty kind of money efficient there. So, which means they've got some potential to try and make some moves. So,
yeah, 100%. Like Jamal Murray's 23. Well, he's 23 this year. Jokic is 25, turning 26 next year. Both born in February, by the way. 4 days apart. There you go. Just learnt that. But so they're a young team. They've got a 5-year window, I would say, 5 or 6 year window that they can be good for a long time. I like their system. I like the way they play. They're emphasizing ball movement. And I think that's Jokic's imprints on the game. They do have some older pieces in players like Paul Millsap. He's probably the biggest guy that comes to mind, and a couple other younger guys. Will Barton has been a bit of a question mark. He's 29, so getting close to that 30 age where players start to decline. But otherwise, all their main pieces are pretty young. Do you think they need to go out and make a move to be the proper contender moving forward?
Well, I guess if we look at the players expiring now, so you got Paul Millsap expiring, you got Mason Plumlee expiring, and they played pretty big roles in that team. I mean, Paul Millsap was a starter, and Plumlee was the center off the bench. He put in a good 15 minutes a game, even in the playoffs. So, and then on top of that, you also have Jeremy Grant, who actually came out in the bubble. He was looking really well, and he's got a player option. So it's up to him if he wants to accept that or not. So if he declines, who knows what the outcome of that could be. So in terms of those three players, I'd say I actually quite like Plumlee because I think he's similar to Jokic in terms of a passing big. So if you want to run the similar plays for your bench, from a coaching perspective, I think that works. And he's athletic, he's mobile, he can do... I think he's probably... The contract he's on now is a bit expensive, so if they can get him at a good price, there's no harm in re-signing him. And then I personally would also really want to re-sign Jeremy Grant because he's still pretty young as well. He's athletic. And as I said, he did really well in the playoffs. Paul Millsap, I think, is the expendable one there. If you're not going to get him on a good kind of low-level kind of veteran contract, I'd just be looking somewhere else.
Yeah, 100% agree with you. I think $30 million off your books from Paul Millsap is huge, and I think that's actually going to free up a lot of space for these guys. Mason Plumlee, again, $14 million for him. That's $44 million off your books of players who are not really contributing compared to some of these other guys. Jeremy Grant is an interesting one. I think that he will opt out. I feel like especially this offseason when there's not that many good free agents, he is someone that showed a bit of promise in the playoffs. His 3-point shooting is looking a lot better. I think he shot close to 40% in the playoffs, and we know that he's got that athleticism and shot blocking ability. So, but he would be a good fit next to Jokic. They need that rim protection that Jokic doesn't provide to be next to him, but still someone who can space the floor. So if Jeremy Grant can fill that role and continue to show improvement in that 3-point shot, I think it's a really good pairing to have those two together. And I think during the regular season, Paul Millsap was starting, so they could grow more with having Grant as their starting four. But I don't see the only question mark for me is Gary Harris, really. And if Gary Harris can be, 2 years ago he was shooting ultra efficient, 50%, nearly shooting 20 points per game, but injuries have sort of led him back. I'm not sure the kind of player he's going to be moving forward. And he's on that, close to $20 million a year. I don't know, I feel like he needs to step up. And I've said it all along, Michael Porter Jr. is going to be taking that next leap. And I think if those two things happen, they, on their day, could compete with any team in the West, really. I think they might have a hard time matchup-wise versus the Lakers because I think Anthony Davis tears that team apart. They don't really have someone to throw at him. But outside of that, I can see them taking down any other team.
Yeah, I think it's critical to get Jeremy Grant back the more I think about it because they don't really have any reliable wing defender because I feel like Gary Harris is a little bit limited with his size. And then usually what they were doing for a lot of playoff games, they'll bring in Torrey Craig, who I also will mention is expiring, so they'll have to try and re-sign him or go somewhere else. And he was he was guarding a lot of guards, and then he'd also guard the small forward on the odd occasion, just because they don't really have that kind of stopper. So I think they really have to get Jeremy Grant back, otherwise that's a huge hole because he is someone that actually did a okay job on Kawhi Leonard and did okay on LeBron. I mean, as good as you kind of can do. I mean, those players are exceptional. But they could also probably use some assistance in the small forward position just to try and get some defense. I think offensively they're probably they're doing pretty well offensively. They had some good season stats. It's more the defense. So maybe they could bring a small forward or some kind of forward that come in as another defensive presence.
You've got a list of free agents up there at the moment. Is there anyone that catches your eye in terms of like a good defender that they can go out for and try and sign? I know this year's free agent pool isn't the most stellar, but is there someone?
Not great. It's really not great. You've got I look at Solomon Hill. I mean, off the bench, I guess Maurice Harkless. You go out and get a Jay Crowder potentially, but I think he's going to re-sign.
You think he'll resign with the Heat?
Yeah, exactly. So I think you're a bit limited there, unfortunately.
I think,
and that's why Grant really is. It's critical to try and get him back.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's going to be an underrated signing. I'm just really interested to see what kind of salary he commands and whether or not, like, first of all, if he opts out, and then if he does, what other teams are willing to pay for him, because I think he's the kind of player that actually is really valuable in today's NBA, like that long sort of wing/post defender that can switch out, cover bigs, cover wing players. So I do think he is quite valuable. Just whether or not the rest of the league, I know leagues up there, a lot of teams may be saving some salary cap for next year when there's a really big free agency class, so perhaps there maybe isn't that much money flying around this year, but who knows. Be interesting to see what he does there. They don't really seem to have any standout awful contracts on this team. I would say that if Gary Harris still plays as like bad as he has the last couple of years, that $19 million next year and $20 million the year after does start to look pretty awful. In saying that, though, there is a world that I see like him actually living up to that contract, but I think at this point it's probably looking less and less likely. But no other really bad contracts outside of that.
You do have, I'll point out maybe the Will Barton contract looks a bit bad as well. He's got the player option in the 21-22 season, and he's looking at $14 million over the next couple of seasons. So individually, so 14 mil. So it takes a bit of cap space out of your available for that that big 21 off season.
Yeah. And of course, their biggest asset, their centerpiece, we've talked about it before, Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic. I do think that these two pieces can be like championship contending pieces. I just think that the surrounding cast needs to be fleshed out. It is probably tough to win with like a point guard center like build in today's NBA. So in saying that, like just getting a lot of interchangeable wings, good defenders, decent shooters, you can fill out that sort of position with semi-serviceable players. Like you were saying, like Solomon Hills, Jay Crowders, those guys, like they don't have to come in and drop 20 a game. They can just come in, hit open shots, defend the wing. And that's, I think with this team, that's sort of like all they're after. And I think if they can get some continued improvement from some of those young guys, I think that potentially could be enough to maybe make some noise in the West.
I'll flip a question at you. You did mention Jokic there. And I guess building a team around him. Would you say that he's up there as, if not the best passing center we've seen? He's only 25 years old, but I feel like he's in that discussion.
Are you talking like all time?
Just all time.
Yeah, look, geez. I guess, yeah, he's probably definitely up there. Off the top of my head, I'm thinking of probably less flashy passes, but someone like a Tim Duncan or a Kevin Garnett were pretty good in their day. But yeah, I'd say Jokic is probably a more complete passer than those guys. He's definitely more creative. Probably had some more highlight assists than some of those guys. Those guys are a bit more fundamental ball movers. So there's no one that clearly stands out to me that's ahead of him. What do you think?
I feel like look, maybe Bill Walton has a debate, but he kind of was derailed with injuries. But maybe you could throw Bill Walton. But why not? He won a championship with the Blazers.
Are you calling Larry Bird a big? Like, is Larry Bird a big man in today's NBA?
No, let's make it a center. Let's restrict it to center. He wasn't a center. So, look, can you win with a passing big man? I mean, Bill Walton did it back in, was it the 70s? That's a while ago. So maybe
bit of a different league.
Yeah, maybe it's not super practical, but look, I think he's a top 10 player. With Jamal Murray, defensively, that's a bit of an issue. But if you get the right supporting cast around them, I don't see why they couldn't win. To be fair, the advanced stats actually suggest that Nikola Jokic is not a horrible defender. Now, he's not a good defender by any means, but he's just a very average defender. Can
But it's just when you start to compare him to players like Anthony Davis and Joel Embiid, who are like exceptional defenders at that position, the gap just seems enormous. So you just need to fill that defensive role in other positions to sort of allow yourself to be sort of acceptable on that end of the court.
He had some really nice clutch stats as well in this postseason, so that's worth mentioning. And same with Jamal Murray. If you look at the best like clutch field goals for players over the past 20 years, you had Jimmy Butler with the second best, so shout out to him. And you also had Jamal Murray as the fourth best clutch field goal over the last 20 years in the postseason. So that's how incredible he was, and it's good to see that they can perform when the stage is so big.
Yeah, definitely. I'm going to throw one more question up at you before we move on to the next team. In the next 5 years, do you see this team winning a championship?
It's a tough question. I think they'll definitely be contenders for 5 years. Could they win one? They need to have the right cast around them. So they need the general manager to really make some moves, and they really need Michael Porter Jr. to kind of explode into an actual star. So if Michael Porter Jr. starts to step up defensively and matures into a star, I think they can.
Wow. Okay. I'm gonna go no on that one. I don't think. Look, could I see a scenario where it does happen? Yes, I definitely could. Michael Porter Jr. could turn into an all-star level player. Jamal Murray could be the second coming of Steph Curry, and I could definitely see it happening. But I'm gonna hedge my bets and say that those things don't happen. I agree with you that they're going to be like perennial contenders. They may even make an NBA Finals, but I don't see a way that this team's beating a team like the Lakers in the coming years, or even a team like some of the Eastern teams that are a bit younger, the Celtics, the Miami Heat. I think even if they meet those kind of teams in the finals, they would still be underdogs. But it could happen. I'm just going to hedge my bets and say probably not in the next 5 years. All right, we'll move on. And the next team we're going to cover in alphabetical order is the Minnesota Timberwolves. There's probably a lot of things to talk about here. We haven't had to chat about the Timberwolves for a little while because obviously they didn't make the playoffs. They're one of the worst teams in the NBA. They have the number one pick in this year's draft. So, well, first of all, obviously they are rebuilding. Would you agree?
Well, it's not a full rebuild because you still have Karl Anthony Towns. So unless you trade him away, you're rebuilding. But I feel like right now their goal is just make the playoffs. So they're not a contender, but right now they're kind of pushing for that 7th, 8th seed, which I will note they've been trying to the past few years and haven't really done it successfully. But I feel like that's not where they are. They're not in total tank mode. They're kind of trying to push for a playoff seed.
I would argue that they should be rebuilding. They may not be trying to rebuild, but I think that they should be. They should be trying to trade bad contracts and other assets for young players and draft picks. With the exception, I mean, Karl Anthony Towns is locked away through till 2024. So you've got that man on a contract. You've got D'Angelo Russell under contract till 2023. They're your two big players. You're going to add another first-round draft pick. He's going to be in books for 4 years. Take this time to gather some more assets, build a team. They're horrible defensively. They've got no defense on their team. So try and accumulate some young, potential athletic players that can grow into that defensive role, and then see if you can go from there. If you keep trying to make the playoffs too soon, you're going to end up in our third category, which we haven't mentioned yet, which is no man's land. You're going to end up at that the Sacramento's. Man, that's where they've been at for the last 10 years. So I don't think you want to be there. So for these guys, I reckon another year or two, developing, playing young guys, and trying to get assets moving forward.
Well, look, I'd argue that they've already got the two core pieces in D'Angelo and Cat, and they're locked down. You've got 3 seasons for D'Angelo, 4 seasons for Towns left in the contract. And right now they've got the first overall pick. So if they hit on this pick, that could be the last piece they need really to try and take them over the edge, because they're still all young players. So, and I feel like it's not great to kind of encourage a losing culture. I feel like historically that's bad. It kind of promotes losing in the future as well. So they should try and get the best talent they can to become an all-star caliber player with those two, and then build off those, core of 3, and then hopefully in 2 or 3 years when the draft pick that they make this year has had a bit of time to mature and grow, at that point they can really start to contend.
Yeah. Like, I'm not saying you should throw games, but I'm just saying, someone like a James Johnson or, some of these other guys, they shouldn't be getting minutes. Like, it should be these older guys. Like Cat, D. Russell, the number 1 draft pick, sure, give them as many minutes as they can handle. Even someone like a Malik Beasley or, a Kogi or someone like that needs to be playing lots of minutes. Naz Reid should be getting lots of minutes. Jarrett Culver should be getting lots of minutes. And getting in... do they still have their coach, actually? Who's their coach?
I think they... maybe they're on the search. I'm not sure if it's been expired, but they didn't fire him. I think it's just a question mark if he's still under contract or not. But there is actually a bit of media saying they might actually be selling this team. So... Just I don't know what's that going to affect, but if the owner decides to sell, you would think the new owner would want some kind of input into the number 1 draft pick that's happening, wouldn't you? But anyway. Yeah,
true. Wonder how that all shakes out. But I look at their squad here that they are all young. I don't think that personally, I don't think they're going to make the playoffs next year. I think just a couple more years, get some. Like Carlton Towns is still 24. Like he's young and I know we compare him to someone of a similar age who's, similar height, like a Giannis, and he's 25. And look at him, look what he's done. But I still think that they've got time. They've got the players that they want are under contract. Let's just chill.
How much are you going to pay Herman Gomez, and are you going to pay Malik Beasley? Is they're expiring.
If you want anything more, then I like Beasley actually. I do like Beasley. Hernan Gomez, if he wants more than like a minimum. See ya. Just get out. Cool.
He's reasonably young though. I don't know. I feel like he's a serviceable.
But he's not the future. He's not the future. You save your capital for next year's free agent class
because they need players to play. You can't just put Delancho and Towns out there. So you just want them all to youth movement.
Yeah, I'm going full like my league. Just clear the house.
They're all the old vets. Well, you need a couple old voices in the room to, maybe it wouldn't mind having James Johnson. He's been at Miami for a while. Miami have good. Kind of protocol. It's good to have a couple of guys like that in the locker room.
Well, look, he's going to re-sign. He's got a $16 million player option. He's obviously going to come back on that. No, he's not. Sure. He's not going to say no to that. But so he'll be there, and I don't mind him being a voice in the locker room. But just don't put him on the fucking court. Like
he was his minutes. Give him 15 minutes or something.
He was playing crazy minutes at the end of last year. Like I had him on my fantasy team. That was how ridiculously he was playing at 25 minutes a game. There's no need for that. Like why are you doing that?
He was putting up pretty good numbers there.
Oh, he was. He was doing great, but it just doesn't do anything for the Timberwolves. So that's where I think they should. That's where they should go. Who do you think they should take at the number 1 pick?
That's a good question. I don't know. I've been tossing up between a few people. I'm kind of I don't really like LiAngelo Ball. I think.
You don't?
LaMelo. I always confuse these guys. The ball boy.
LaMelo.
Yeah,
LaMelo Ball.
LiAngelo, he probably shouldn't be drafted either. Is he still around?
I think he's over in Europe.
He's over in Europe, is he? Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a weird draft. I feel like honestly, I think whoever's going to... I feel like it's just going to kind of be, to some respect, a bit of a bust, regardless of who you take. I think they're all just a bit... the hype of it, and I think it's just going to be a bad draft. So
yeah.
I feel like the height of anyone in this draft is kind of like all-star, but not like an actual superstar, which is what you want for your number 1 pick.
Yeah. Look, I kind of agree with you. If they have the number 1 pick, they're not going to trade it. They just had it. I would take LaMelo Ball. I think he's the best player in the draft. I think he has the highest upside. He may not reach it. If he was in another draft, let's say last year's, he probably wouldn't have been top 5. But in this year's draft, I think he's got the highest upside. You swing for it. He's 6'7", so he and D'Angelo Russell can play together. I don't love it though. So what I would like to see them do, if they can, is try and trade down, maybe get another draft pick in the process for next year or the year after, or a young player in return, and then move back in the draft. There's a few defensive wings and power forwards in the draft that look to be serviceable. Good team players that potentially may make one all-star game in their career. So I think that's the play for them. I don't know who's the team that wants to move up in the draft. Like the top of the draft seems to be pretty guard heavy. So maybe someone like the Knicks or even Chicago might want to get up there. That's what I see would be a good thing. Like, would you trade the number 1 pick for the Knicks pick and one of their young players, like a Mitch Robinson or someone like that?
Yeah, I'd do something like that. I think the more you talk me into it, I think it probably does make sense. Most of the mock drafts have Anthony Edwards, which I guess would be a good fit for them, but I feel like he's not the star that everyone's expecting. So I think it is smart to trade down, spin the dice on someone else, and then try and get another asset, or like you were saying, make a bit of a trade, try and get some trade value with another young player as well, have more assets than before.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's the way they go. Whether or not they do it, and whether or not other teams are willing to do that, because everyone knows that this year the draft isn't great. But I could see a team like the Knicks doing that. Swinging for the fences, getting the fans excited. Who knows?
That is something the Knicks would do, isn't it? And then they probably draft a power forward.
I reckon Frankie Nickett, what's his name? Ntilikina. Yeah, he would look good on this Minnesota team.
Actually,
good defensive guard.
I've still got a little bit of stock in Frank the Tank.
Yeah,
he came into the league really young, and I feel like people do kind of knock him for that. I mean,
and plus he's playing
like Obi Toppin. I think isn't he Obi about 21 or 22? Who's drafted? He's like scheduled for the top 5.
Yeah, I think he's old. I think he could even be older than that. Obi Toppin.
And then you got someone like Frank Ntilikina, who he's how old is he? He's pretty damn young.
Yeah, he's been in the league a few years, and when
he's pretty much the same age. Frank's 22 years old.
Yeah, and plus, like, he's playing on the Knicks. You're probably not going to develop into the player that you're like capable of being on the Knicks. Let's be fair, especially when like they seem to just change their decisions all the time. And anyway, so there you go, Frankie Ntilikina over to the Minnesota Timberwolves.
Is that the trade? I like it. Let's make it happen.
And move down. Maybe you throw in a second rounder as well.
We'll have to ask Michael, the New York Knicks fan, next time he's on.
Yeah, I'm sure he'd probably be pretty wrapped with that, I'd say. All right, let's move on. Oh, actually, one question before we go along. Do you think that Karl-Anthony Towns and D'Angelo Russell are capable of being the cornerstone championship team, like pieces for a championship team? Like,
I feel like this is an easy one, and the answer is no, they cannot. I am not sold on Karl-Anthony Towns, and I'm not sold on D'Angelo Russell. I do think offensively they'll be a pretty cool 1-2 punch. They might even be worthwhile watching, but I feel like literally their ceiling would be, with not a good piece around them, maybe, I think it's going to be a low seed. It might be like a 6-7 seed, something like that. I think it's their ceiling, and it's maybe I'll say a second round team. Their ceiling is a second round team.
Okay, interesting. I guess, and I revealed this on our top 15 players, I think I'm higher than most people on Karl-Anthony Towns. Look, I get he's not a good defender, but like as a big guy, this dude is ultra skilled. Like he can shoot really, really well for a big man. He's an excellent ball handler. He's actually, talk about good passes, he's not Jokic, but he's a decent passer. And I think D'Angelo Russell, like he's had a bit of a rough... Yeah, he's also had a bit of a rough career so far in terms of like reputation. I feel like he's gotten a worse rap compared to like actually how good he is. Like he's a decent player. He can shoot the ball. He can handle it pretty well. Obviously, like the biggest glaring weakness between those two players is defense. But in saying that, when we were talking about the last team, the Nuggets, the biggest glaring weakness we found in those teams was defense. So look, I think they're like just a worse version of the Nuggets with less pieces around them.
I think that's a good way to put it, actually.
Yeah.
That is a worse version of the Nuggets.
Yeah. So, and obviously, I didn't think the Nuggets were going to win anything. I'm probably in agreement with you, but maybe they can make a conference finals. Let's say that. A conference finals. Oh, actually, now that I say that out loud, it sounds silly.
They made the 8th seed when they had Jimmy Buckets carrying them and closing out games, and they haven't been in playoffs since.
Mate. Yeah, well, what if they draft someone who turns into a Jimmy Buckets? Who knows?
Yeah,
maybe Anthony Edwards turns into something special. Who knows? I don't know. Yeah, maybe conference finals is a bit rich. I'll probably agree with you there with that second round. Maybe they're lingering in the playoffs for a couple of years.
They have to hit on this draft pick. If they hit on this, I feel like it could change. If they actually do end up getting like a superstar talent, which I think is unlikely, but it could happen. And
we're all just really spitballing with these young, talents in the draft. We don't really know what's going to happen until, Giannis was pick 15 in the draft. Things like that can happen. All right, let's move on to this next team. This team has a super bright future, and they can go a million different ways this offseason, and it's the Oklahoma City Thunder. I'm going to start with, what do you think this team is? Are they a contender? Are they rebuilding? Or are they in no man's land?
I think you pronounced it wrong, Mitch. It's actually Oklahoma Pick City. With all the picks that they've attained, I think obviously you just kind of like keep trying to get the best asset you can, grow on some young talent, and in a few years that they'd be something. What's your thoughts?
Look, I think they should be a rebuilding team, but they don't have to be like a straight up terrible rebuilding team. They could be like, they could do like a Celtics rebuild, sort of like on the fly. You know, when the Celtics were like, they had a year or two where they were out of the playoffs, but then they were making the playoffs with Isaiah Thomas, but then still getting draft picks and drafting Jason Tatum, drafting Jaylen Brown. So I feel like OKC is in like that kind of mold. So I guess you would call it rebuilding, but it'll be a really, really quick rebuild and a long rebuild. They're going to be good for a long time. I see this team having, once they start getting going, like a 10-year window where they're going to be good. I really like, obviously they've got draft picks.
That's a big window. Jeez.
Yeah. Do you know how many draft picks they've got?
Yeah, that's fair. Okay, I'll read him out right now. Here we go. You got the 2020 Denver pick, first round.
Yeah.
You have the 2021 first rounder for Miami or Houston. They got swap rights.
Yep.
You got the 2022 first round for the Clippers, 23 first round for the Clippers, 23 first round for Miami, 24 for Houston, 24 for the Clippers, 25 for Houston or Clippers. So swap rights again. 26 for Houston, 26 for LA Clippers. All of those are first round picks. That's ridiculous.
100%. And am I right in saying that they're all unprotected, or at least they're swaps?
Most of them, you got a few swap rights.
Yeah.
But
none of them are like.
I think there's a few that are protected 1 to 4. They vary.
Okay. So, but little protection on those picks. Like, what I'm trying to say is that, like, Houston and the Clippers, there is a scenario that after this season, those teams could be awful. You know, like, Kawhi and Paul George have 1-year deals. They can opt out at the end of next season. Houston, who knows what the fuck they're doing. We're going to cover them in a different pod, but that'll be interesting. They could be awful, you know, and those picks are in the future. Like, they're not, you know, all next year. So those could be, you know, the reason I compare them to the Celtics is like the trade that the Celtics made for Brooklyn and all of those picks back when they got rid of Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce. That seems like really similar to this team and these picks that they've accumulated to me. It's a swing for the fence.
I think they got Jason Tatum out of that deal. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, they did. That. One of those picks turns to Jason Tatum. Another pick turned into Jaylen Brown. With their own pick when they were bad, they got Marcus Smart. And think about those 3 pieces. Like, those 3 pieces, you know, Celtics have been in the playoffs for the last 3 or 4 years. And think about how young those pieces are. They're going to be in the playoffs for the next 6 years. There's your 10-year window. Like, and that's what I see going on with, like, this OKC team. You know, they made the playoffs this year, so they could choose to keep Chris Paul and all these other players around, try and get into the playoffs again. I really like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I think he's a great young talent, a perfect sort of guard in today's NBA. And we've got our boy Dort on the side as well, another young player.
You're talking about the top defensive player in the league, Lou Dort.
I am, Lou Dort.
We can't glance over that name.
Yeah, exactly. They've got a few guys coming off the books. You know, Gallinari's coming off the books. They're finally going to get rid of Andre Robinson, who's, I don't know how he's managed to stay in the league this long. You know, they've just got, like, they're going to have so much flexibility, especially coming into next year. They could make a huge signing. They'll have, like, coming into the 22 season, they're going to have no cap, like, nothing on their books. Steven Adams will come off their books. Schroeder will come off their books. They're going to have so much room to go out and grab a free agent. And, like, instantly they could be back into title contendership with all these assets coming along. I really like the future that this OKC team has. So I reckon this year you do a Golden State Warriors move. You tank for the year, try and get a high draft pick, and then next year you're straight back into it. That's what I think they should do.
Tank, maybe let's talk about trades. If you're going to tank, should you trade Chris Paul?
I think, and I've never been more certain about any other trade happening. Like, I think Chris Paul is 100% getting traded this season. 100%. Okay. I'm more confident with Chris Paul getting traded than any other player in the league. I feel like there's just been so many noise. He's been linked to the Bucks. He's been linked to the Lakers. He doesn't really want to be here. He's done his job in terms of like mentoring these young guys. And I think if the Oklahoma City are going to trade him, it has to be this year. He's 35 years old. Last year, he still had a great season, so you've got to capitalize on that value now. You can't let like another injury come along. You can't let him show his age anymore. So I think, yeah, definitely if you want to trade him, it has to be basically before the season starts. So I think that he'll get traded.
I totally agree. Yeah, I totally agree. I think as you touched on, Chris Paul, like, he had one job to do, and he came in, he did his job. His job was to regain some trade value, and that's what he's done.
100%.
Before coming into the season, he was almost untradeable.
Yeah.
So, and I feel like now they can get back an asset for him, so they should just do it, flip the switch.
I mean, look at these salaries. 38 million. He had 38 million this year. He's got a $41 million contract next year, and then a player option for 44 million, which he's no doubt going to take. So you've got to trade him. Yeah, you've got to trade him to a team that's win now mode. Which, you know, there are teams out there that I think will want Chris Paul on their team. Some desperate teams. Like, I think Milwaukee would be perfect for Chris Paul to go to. Like, they're desperate to, you know, like, if they don't win, Giannis is walking, you know? So there's a lot of pressure there. So getting a veteran like Chris Paul would be enormous for them.
I love him on the Bucks as well. I think that's a huge fit. That they lack that late game closer.
Yeah.
I mean, Chris Paul's getting a bit old now, but he's still such a smart vet. He can make things happen. And with Giannis, I think that'd be so deadly.
And I think he would just organize that offense a lot better. It's something that's like gotten a bit stale in Milwaukee, so I do like that fit. What do you think that like they're getting back for Chris Paul? Like, are they getting a first round pick back, or like how much value do you think he has? Like, it's a big contract.
It is a big contract. You got to try and get some young assets for it. So I assume there'd be a draft pick thrown in, then the hard thing is just to make the salary work.
Yeah, you got to make the salary match.
Yeah, exactly. So that's where it would be pretty hard. I don't know what kind of contracts the Bucks could throw at the Thunder, and then maybe another target, say Miami Heat. I think he could potentially be a good fit. I don't know what contracts you'd throw in there as well. It'd be hard to do the math to make it work, but you definitely are going to be some draft picks involved. Yeah,
definitely. I don't have the NBA trade machine at my disposal right now, but I'm sure that there's some way that those teams can get that done. There's probably some bad contracts on there that they could maybe attach assets to as well. And I'm sure that OKC, if I'm the OKC, I'd be willing to take on bad contracts that aren't ridiculously too long and accept some more picks and more assets in doing that. Do you think that they sign Gallinari, or do you think that he goes somewhere else? He's probably one of the bigger free agents this offseason.
I think the strategy would be to try and maybe sign trade. Would be the best option for both scenarios. Is try and make Gallo happy. Where's you going to move to? Gallo, we'll give you a bit of money and we'll trade you over, kind of thing. I think that makes them. That's just a win-win situation. So that should be ideally that's what they go for. But it's up to Gallo. Maybe Gallo wants to dip his toe in the free agency market, see what kind of money you can get.
Yeah, look, I don't really see him coming back to this team. I know they made the playoffs this year. They took the Rockets to 7 games, nearly went to the second round, but I just feel like that's it for this team. Like, they're not going to do much better than that. They've sort of reached their potential, and I think some of these veteran guys are gonna make their way to other teams.
Yeah, and I feel like on top of that, expiring contracts going into this next season. Steven Adams is expiring. He's on a big contract, but now it's expiring. It's tradable. And then also Dennis Schroeder is on 15 mil. Which is, I think that's very tradable as well, to be honest. There's a lot of teams out there in the playoffs that need a good point guard, maybe a point guard off your bench as well. So he was a top 3 for 6 man of the year. So he's got a bit of respect in the league now. I think he's good. He did really well in the playoffs too, so that's worth mentioning.
Yeah, 100%. If I'm then, I'm cleaning shop. I'm getting rid of Steven Adams, Dennis Schroeder, if I can. I don't know what sort of value you'd get, but I'd be cleaning house for them and doing a really quick rebuild, get salary cap space, and who knows, maybe you sign Giannis next season and you're straight into title contention. Who knows? Let's move on. We've got another couple.
Can I do a quick trade? Would you do this as a Celtics fan?
Yeah, go.
Let's say Gordon Hayward for Steven Adams, maybe a few more things in there as well. Maybe they throw in Schroeder, Steven Adams and Schroeder for Gordon Hayward, something like that.
Nah, as a Celtics fan, I don't do that trade. I don't really rate Steven Adams as like a modern day big. I think Daniel Tice does like a better job than what Steven Adams does on our team. And Schroeder, like it's then like sort of like a Schroeder for Hayward thing. And I'd just rather the bigger body. I think Hayward's had some rough luck. Like he's had some injuries, and during the season he's put up 17 points a game, like, and fairly efficiently too. So I just roll with Gordon Hayward in that scenario and write out his contract one more year. Nice try, but all right. Let's move on to the Portland Trailblazers. Now, interesting team. What do you think these guys are? Are they a championship contender, rebuilding, or are they in no man's land?
Well, when you got Dame Lillard, I feel like you're contending. I mean, let's not forget they made the Western Conference Finals last year. So
yeah.
I feel like they are contending. They had the same core. They were kind of derailed a bit by injuries this year, and also by terrible GM work in terms of free agents, because that Mario Hezonja was terrible. I feel like all of the off-signing was pretty bad. They had to get Carmelo Anthony to come in, which was kind of due to injury a bit as well, but Carmelo had to come in and actually start for them, which is, I mean, that's never a great situation at all. They traded for Trevor Ariza, who's got 12.8 mil for next season, which I think is too much. He's kind of fallen off a cliff.
He's a bit washed up.
Pretty much this season, he's gone. And the big question is, will CJ and will Dame Lillard be a good enough backcourt to actually compete for a championship or win a championship?
Yeah.
They can compete, but I don't think they can win it. Do you think they can win it?
No, I really don't. I'm putting this team in the no man's land category. Like, it's that weird spot where, like, I don't think they're a legitimate title contender. They're good enough to make the playoffs each year, but I don't know what you can do with a team that's like led by two guys who are under 6'3". Like, it's not the remedy for a success in the NBA. In my opinion, and I don't know what you actually get for this, but I think you've got to try and trade CJ McCollum. I just don't think that you can have those two be your best two players. I think you want another bigger body, someone who can defend the wing and score, to be your second best player or third best player. Maybe Nurkic can step up and be that number two guy. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what you get for CJ McCollum. Like, look at his contract. He's signed through to 2024, earning $30+ million every year. That's a steep contract. He's 29. Like, he's not going to get any better than this. Like, this is who he is. And by that 2024, he'll be what, like 33, starting to decline there. So it's not a horrible contract, but it's definitely not one that you'd really want on your books.
Well, I would say that. I think it's got value. It's just hard to make the math work with another team. I love CJ. I think CJ is a great player. Look, this past season, what's he put up? 22 points a game. 4 and 4. 22, 4 and 4. That's pretty good numbers. And he shoots that three ball efficiently. He can make good passes. He can be a good kind of, if you want to stagger your bench unit, he can play a bit of the point guard as well and just be more of a scoring threat. So I think he would be a lot of value on teams. It's just really making the math work. And I do think they need to get rid of him. Like you were saying, I think really this team's really missing a wing. They have to get a wing player. If you can try and trade him for a good two-way wing, that's probably the way to go. Where would I like to see CJ? Could the Mavs trade for him? Him and Luka, I don't know, that could be a good fit.
The Mavs are not going to trade anyone. They're trying to keep cap space for next year. I don't see them trading. I've heard people throw Jaylen Brown's name in there for the Celtics, and you throw. I hate that.
I feel like you wouldn't do that after the playoffs. Surely you
100%. Yeah, I don't know. I've just been hearing rumors, but I definitely wouldn't do that. But I don't see a real spot for CJ to go that another team would give up a good enough asset to get rid of him. It's just that awkward spot. Like, he's a good player, but he's not good enough for the salary, and he's not good enough that you're going to be a title contender. But yet he's too good to just accept bits and pieces back in a trade. So it's just really awkward. So that's why I think these guys are a bit of a no man's land team. They're just going to be like that. Like, what were they, the 8th seed this year? I know they had a few injuries throughout the season, but I don't know. Maybe at best they're like a 6th or 7th seed in the West. Maybe they can win a first round matchup, but I don't see them contending with like your Lakers or Clippers or even Nuggets in the West or the
I feel
Mavericks.
like they hit the ceiling. They made the Western Conference Finals last year, and that's probably as good as his team was going to be. So maybe, they need to make some moves.
I'll also say Damien Lillard in 2024-25, he's going to be earning $54 million a year, and he's going to be 35 years old.
It's getting paid.
Good on you, Dame. Good on you. I mean, that'll be the end of his season. It's not Chris Paul level bad, but that's a hefty chunk of your salary cap.
Well, he can shoot though, man. Like
Logo Lillard. He is worth it.
Logo Lillard.
He is worth it. Yeah. I do want to touch on Yusuf Nurkic, actually. I think he is probably, if I look at this roster, he's probably like almost their most valuable asset at $12 million a year for the next couple of years. He's 26. Like, I feel like I would have thought he was older than that. Like, he's still only 26. He's got like time to get better. He looked amazing in the bubble. And like him over Whiteside is a huge improvement in my eyes. I think he's a better defender. I know Whiteside blocks a lot of shots, but Nurkic is a better defender, better playmaker, just way more skilled. So I think Nurkic has got some room to grow. And if he turns into like this, number 2 option on this team, that's when I start to see that, okay, maybe they can make some noise. But so I think a lot rides on him. What do you think of Yusuf Nurkic?
Yeah, I think I do agree. They've still got 2 more years out of him, $12 million each year. That's pretty good. He's got really great chemistry with CJ and Dame, especially Dame. You look at the plus minus with him and Dame in the court, it's like actually one of the best kind of duos in the league, which is surprising. And the only reason they fell that 9th seed, they did steal the 8th seed on the playing tournament, but the only reason they were in the 9th on that 9 was just because Nurkic was derailed with injury. In conjunction with a few other players. You had Rodney Hood, who I assume is going to take his player option because he did his Achilles, so ugly injury. He'll take that player option at $6 million. He was meant to be their starting kind of small forward. He's gone. And then you got they put a bit of investment into Anthony Simmons?
Yeah, Anthony Simmons. Yeah.
Who, I mean, I think at the start of the season they were saying he's not tradable. Like, no, we're not going to trade him. He was pretty bad.
Yeah, so, there was some hype coming into what's his name? Anthony Simmons. Anthony Simmons. But yeah, kind of fizzled out halfway through the season.
But what about Gary Trent Jr.? 21 years old. Until we mentioned Gary.
Oh yeah, he was lining up in the bubble. Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't know if he's the guy you want to sort of build around or like he's there. He's a rotation player. But yeah, I do actually. I want to mention one more guy before we move on. Zach Collins. I'm a believer in Zach Collins. I think he has some potential. Like that stretch big man, can play some defense, can block shot. He's long. Obviously had some disappointing injuries to his shoulders last year. Didn't play. I think he only played like 4 or 5 games in total last year. Yeah. But
he played 11 games this season in total.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I think he came back for the bubble, but then re-injured himself.
Yeah.
So bit unlucky for him. So we'll see where he's at and if he's healthy come next year. But he's still only 22. So between him, Simmons, Nurkic, there's your young guys, and Gary Trent. But yeah, the other guys, like, I don't know. There's just a lot of old bodies on this team that I don't think deserve to be on the NBA court. Like Trevor Ariza, 35, Melo, 36. Melo, just retire already, please.
And you got people like Mario Hezonja, who is terrible as well. Like, their wings suck, and they need.
Their wings do suck. Yeah, and that's definitely where they need to add someone. I don't know if they have the salary cap to do this, but what if they add someone like a Danilo Gallinari? There's a player that might suit this team pretty good.
Well, I feel like he's just defensively limited again. So I feel like, offensively, this team doesn't really have a problem. They need a wing who can be
a two-way sort of wing.
Guy.
Yeah. I keep thinking of Jay Crowder as the perfect guy. He seems to be coming up a fair bit. Yeah,
he'd be doable.
Again, age though is
Marcus Morris, Evan Turner. Who else could they look into? Solomon Hill, Tony Snell.
It's really a shit class, isn't it? There's really no options, is there? Yeah. Oh yeah, wouldn't that be funny?
There's some options out there, actually, but they're nothing great.
Yeah. All right, we'll move on to our final team, the Utah Jazz. So obviously they went to 7 games with the Denver Nuggets, who we thought were a title contending team. What do you think about this Utah Jazz team? Where are they at?
That's a good question. I feel like they probably should. I don't know, that series with Denver. I thought they had it, and then they were up 3-1, and I was like, "Oh, this team's way too good. They're going to roll through them." But then they just ended up losing 3 games in a row. I mean, I love me some Donovan Mitchell. He's still on his rookie deal. How crazy is that?
Crazy.
And next year he's still on his rookie deal. It's only $5 million for him next year.
Yeah.
So he's so cheap.
He's going to get paid soon. He'll sign his rookie extension in this offseason, you would think. But it's a weird sort of team that I look at, these guys. Like, I feel like it's another team that is probably in no man's land, but maybe a bit more on like the title contending side of things. But do I see them winning one? No, not really.
Like, they're one piece away, I reckon, and then it needs to be a pretty considerable piece. You need Donovan Mitchell to step up. You need Rudy to keep performing like he is. I don't know who they can get there. I mean, look, maybe on one perspective, of being a Utah fan, you'd be like, "Oh, look, in the bubble we didn't have Bojan Bogdanovic. They very well may have taken out the Nuggets if they had Bojan Bogdanovic, and we could have made the conference finals. Who knows? So it could be a totally different story.
Yeah, definitely. I think. Look, I like their head coach. I like the way that this team is constructed in terms of like the fit. Donovan Mitchell obviously is a star. He's still only 24 years old. Do you think he can, like we talked about Jamal Murray, do you think that he can keep up the level of play that he demonstrated in the bubble? Like, do you think that that's the Donovan Mitchell we're getting? Like, he was putting up some...
I love Donovan Mitchell. Like, even during the regular season, I think he was putting up like 25, 5 and 5. I'll start check that now. But he was putting up numbers in the regular season too.
If you look at during the regular season, and this is another reason why I had in our top 15, I had Rudy Gobert as the most important or the best player on this team. And after watching the playoffs, I may switch that around. And I'll just...
You're coming to my side of the fence.
Yeah, well, I'll need to see it solidified over the course of a season. Like, it was a 7-game sample size that he popped off, so it is tough to say that that's who he is. Whereas Jamal Murray had a bit more of a sample size against some good defensive teams. Denver's not the most defensively minded team. In saying that, though, he had multiple 50-point games in a playoff series, so you got to give the man your respect. But in the advanced metrics of the games, Rudy Gobert's numbers, like his box score plus minus, his PIPM were like towards the top of the league, and Donovan Mitchell was substantially lower compared to Rudy. So I'm hoping that Donovan can turn his like gaudy stats into like winning basketball a bit more. But yeah, I think. But outside of him, they've got, I don't want to say an old team, but it just doesn't seem like everyone else is on the same timeline as Donovan Mitchell, if you know what I mean. Like Mike Conley, 33, Bojan is turning 32 next year. Even Rudy Gobert is like, he's going to be 29 next year. He's approaching 30. He's going to be turning 30 when his contract extension or free agency comes. So like, it's like a weird timeline, if you know what I mean. They're not on the same wavelength. Like say like the Nuggets are. The Nuggets are all young. All their best players are younger, whereas these guys are a bit all over the shop.
I feel if you're looking at a window, I'd still say the next 2 years they're definitely going to compete for.
Yeah.
Maybe the ceiling is a Western Conference Finals. You get Bojan back. Maybe they get another piece that works out for him. So I feel like, do I think they're going to win a title? I mean, no. But I feel like they're still competing for the next couple years. But yeah, you're right. Look, Conley, he's going to start to decline. Bojan, he's going to start to decline after a couple years. Joe Ingles has already showed some decline
he's
already.
Slowed down this year.
He's on the books for 2 more years. So I feel like you're going to have to bring him off the bench now, from my opinion. And then even some of the other players they have, it's just, nothing. That bench was terrible. So it's one of the worst benches in the league. And I mean, shout out, Jordan Clarkson was pretty good. He is expiring. We can get to him next, but that supporting cast is the biggest problem. And one of the reasons, actually, I said it on a few pods ago, that I see Jordan Clarkson winning the 6th Man of the Year award potentially is because if he re-signs with this Utah Jazz team, he's just like, give him the ball, he's going to put up 18 to 20 points a night because he's the only person who can do anything on that bench. And he actually has surprisingly done a pretty good job at that. So, and as we all know, Sixth Man of the Year is pretty much just who can score the most points. And he can put up buckets. So
yeah, don't get me started on Sixth Man of the Year.
Would you resign Jordan Clarkson?
It would depend on the salary. Like, I don't know.
But they have to have something off that. Like, you can't not. Like, they have nothing on their bench already.
I know they've got nothing.
You have to bring it back.
But is Jordan Clarkson the answer? Like, are we really like, I don't know. He's so one note. I don't know. I'd feel more comfortable if I was to get like more wing shooting. Maybe.
But there's not much of that in the league, and there's the free agency, as you saw, is pretty scarce. So
yeah,
you got to go for him, I think.
Yeah, I don't know. It is so slim pickings. Maybe you give him a 1 or 2 year deal. I don't know. It would depend on the salary. Like if he's getting, like I wouldn't pay his salary that he's got there now. Like I'd try get him closer to like $10 million a year or less. I don't know. I really don't know what to do with this team. I think like shooting is what they need, and obviously Jordan Clarkson can do that somewhat. But I think that they definitely just need shooting. The more shooting they can get, the better that they'll be. And I do think that they really did miss Bojan Bogdanovic in the playoffs, because no one else on this team can shoot really. Like I guess Jingles can do a little bit, but he's not the most reliable guy, and he's just getting older. But outside of Donovan Mitchell, Mike Conley was awful last year. He had injuries. Hopefully he can regain some form and get a bit more rhythm with his team. But yeah, I think shooting is the biggest need for this team to address. I just don't know if Jordan Clarkson is that guy.
Well, look, they have nothing on the bench, so they have to bring him back. I'll mention maybe Royce O'Neal. I actually don't mind him. I think he's a serviceable role player. That's all he really is, but he's a good role player, can play a bit of defense, can shoot the open three, and they've actually locked him down. He's locked down to the 23-24 season, so he got paid. It's not about $8 to $9 million each year, so
I think that's a fair contract. What about? I'll throw some names at you. What about someone like a Kent Bazemore? I'd rather have Kent Bazemore than Jordan Clarkson, I'd say.
Well, I reckon they should just get him anyway. They need to upgrade that bench, so they have to. They're missing 3 players because their bench is so trash. So bring him in, sure. I reckon that'd be a reasonable fit too. Yeah. Okay. That's like the kind of player that I'm thinking would be good for them. Like, I know we've thrown Solomon Hill's name out there. Like, he could be a decent, like, just serviceable rotation kind of player for them. I don't know what Brooklyn's doing with Joe Harris. They probably will look to re-sign him, but say that they go somewhere else, he would be a perfect guy to come and slot into this team. I know he's a bit old, but even like a Marco Bellinelli sort of type player is another guy that I'm looking at for them. But just like those classic, floor spacing wing players that can knock down a bucket and give Donovan Mitchell that space that he needs to get in there and create. Because if they don't have that shooting, they pack him in, and it's really hard for him to score then moving forward. So yeah, do you think their ceiling's Western Conference Finals? Yeah, I think with a healthy squad, and they need to upgrade their bench. I think that is kind of important as well. Get a couple good pieces off the bench. Get a healthy Bojan Bogdanovic and an actual reasonable Mike Conley, because I don't know where he went this past year. If he comes back strong this season, maybe gets a bit more comfortable with the players and a bit more comfortable with Rudy and Donovan. Ceiling is Western Conference Finals for me. Yeah,
I probably agree with you. I think they probably don't get there. I think they're probably like a first, second round team really for the next 5 years, then they start to drop off, and who knows, maybe Donovan Mitchell goes elsewhere. We'll have to see.
Surely he's going to get a max, so he'll be around for like another 5 years, in my opinion.
I suppose he will be there after he signs his extension. So
yeah, the question is, does Rudy re-sign next season, the 2021? If he decides to leave, then solely their responsibility is built around Donovan. So
I have a feeling that next year's free agency is going to be crazy, and we could see some huge moves. So I wouldn't even guarantee that Rudy comes back to this team. Who knows? All right, we're going to call it there. We're going to keep getting down through these leagues. Next pod, we're going to go through the Pacific Division. Lots of juicy teams in there. Golden State, Lakers, Clippers, Phoenix, Sacramento. So lots of teams on both ends of the spectrum there to talk about. And we've also got some other off-season stuff coming towards you guys. We're going to be doing some draft do-overs, some fantasy content, hopefully coming soon when we start to think about next year's fantasy seasons. So keep listening, and we will catch you guys next time. See ya.